you might say like, well, rule of law means like one thing to you, but I will tell you that there's an alternative universe that most red-pilled Republicans, Trump supporters live in now. It's an entirely different media ecosystem, and they are there to tell all of their listeners and all of their voters that it is Democrats who are abusing the rule of law.
If you don't have a common set of facts, you can't really argue with people who are basically deluded into thinking that the rules aren't applied equally.
Sarah Bruce has a question for you. It says, in your focus groups, do you hear concerns expressed about the rule of law, or is that basically a non-issue out there? He says he's asking this because he's frankly terrified by attacks by Trump and his administration on law and the judiciary. Without the rule of law, the American experiment is basically over. That's his comment here. But the question is clear enough.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats are concerned about the rule of law, but the thing you have to understand about people who are either red pilled or they're Trump supporters, and they live in a right wing media ecosystem in which they will tell you that the law was abused to go after Trump, that that was lawfare, that the DOJ was corrupt, and that they, went after Trump with all those court cases, and they're just trying to get him. And so, I do this on democracy too. I'm sure we've talked about this because I've been with you guys a bunch of times. But back in 2020, people would ask me, "What do voters think about democracy?" And I would say, like, "Well, they don't think about democracy." Like going into 2020, but then after January 6th, and by 2022, they cared about democracy, but democracy was polarized. So if you asked a Republican who's the biggest threat to democracy, they would say Joe Biden because he stole the election in 2020. You ask a Democrat, they would say, well, Republicans are the biggest threat because they attacked the Capitol and refused to accept the results. By 2024, democracy, actually, people think that Democrats are pretty anti-democracy because they didn't have an election in 2024, like for their primary. They just had Kamala Harris, and so you hear this from voters where, they're just, you might say like, well, rule of law means like one thing to you, but I will tell you that there's an alternative universe that most red-pilled Republicans, Trump supporters live in now. It's an entirely different media ecosystem, and they are there to tell all of their listeners and all of their voters that it is Democrats who are abusing the rule of law.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up on that, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, and I want to talk about the rule of law. I want to do nothing but talk about the rule of law. But what's the rule of law? The rule of law says that two people who are similarly situated, but maybe on different sides of the political fence, if they do the same thing or the equivalent, they will be treated the same way. But that requires a common set of facts to be able to say, well, this guy did this, he's a Democrat, and he got this, and this guy did this, he's a Republican, he should also get the same fate. If you don't have a common set of facts, you can't really argue with people who are basically deluded into thinking that the rules aren't applied equally.
We're going to be back next week, and be sure to check that one out. John Michaels with Madeline Brand talking about a vigilante nation, the subversion of American democracy. That's next week. Have a good night. Thanks a lot for being with us.